My friend Roger Dykes is standing by. Could we refer to that as Studio B over there where you're at?
You could, but don't ever say I'm standing by.
It's going to be one of those shows.
Never done
that. Roger, it's good to see you this morning.
Good to see you too, sir.
Before we went on, I was going through and looking at some pictures made a long time ago, not necessarily far, far away, but a long time ago.
It was pretty far away.
And I just want to say that the whole silver fox thing that you got going now looks good.
Well, thank you.
When I saw those pictures, I thought, he's just a young fellow. And I missed the silver.
Yeah, right.
We got good stuff to talk about on the show today.
I'm looking forward to it.
For once.
I'll be good.
I'll
be glad when you let me know what we're
doing. Well, Roger, we're going to be talking about a kind of a remarkable story of how you ended up in some of the places that you ended up in. And we're going to really be talking about UV Blake Records and the thing that you did there, that the entire city of Lubbock, Texas, became aware of your existence and went down and met you. And it's a great story. So we're gonna. You did change the landscape for the record retail sales, and something that it is much like being a radio announcer. The industry is pretty well dissolved out from under us.
Yeah.
But we've all found other things to do. So you did that too in a day where record stores were a big deal.
When I first got into it, they were a big deal. Yes, they became not a big deal shortly after that.
Oh, you're preaching to the choir, brother.
It was called Walmart.
Let's get this thing kicked off, okay?
All right.
Hello, I'm Michael Shawn, and welcome to Roger Dykes Just Sayin. Roger Dykes is a teacher and counselor with a master's degree in family counseling from Texas Tech University. He is the owner of UV Blake Records and has written a book titled Non-Persons Rolling in a Normal World. And there's a few more things. Roger was born with cerebral palsy, now a quadriplegic. He has been confined most of his life to a wheelchair. And for a while, even enjoying a career as a stand-up or sit-down comedian and after-dinner speaker. Disabled? Yes, but you forget about that pretty quickly because Roger thrives. So here is Roger Dykes.
Good morning. How you doing, Michael?
You related this story. It caught me totally by surprise. I was not ready for where it led. You know, you see a lot of the YouTube and that sort of thing now, and they will flash up on the screen, wait till the end. And I just want to tell people, wait till the end of the story because you're going to go, oh, really? And that, of course, will give us a chance to talk about UV Blake Records a little bit. And that's a neat story, too.
Well, good. Yes, I was 3 years old, well, going toward 3 years old. And one of the things that I enjoyed doing was listening to records. And there was more to listening to records back then than there is listening to music today. And so for anybody young enough to not remember or never seen a record changer, This was something that was in everybody's home back those days, but it didn't work like they do now. You'd stack records up and turn them on, and they would automatically drop and play the next record. And then you came in and turned them over and played the other side. That's how it was done.
That's the way a playlist was created.
Exactly.
Back in the day.
And so you're showing them a picture probably at this point about the seeing me as a somewhat younger person, quite a bit younger, small person. Mm-hmm. Now, if you remember from our previous recordings, we've told you that I didn't have any natural balance.
Wait a minute, Roger, my mother never threw me in the dirty clothes hamper.
Well,
what's all that about?
Well, that was so I could stand up, because part of it was exercise. I have braces on underneath. You can't see the braces because of the clothes hamper, but I had braces on. And part of the therapy was for me to stand. Well, I would stand a lot longer and stay satisfied if I was listening to music, because I've loved listening to music ever since I was almost born, I guess. And so, but part of the fun was watching the record changer drop the records and play the next one. And then Mom would come in after they all played however many you could stack up, and she would turn them over and would play the other side. So this was how I got therapy done, and at the same time had a relatively enjoyable experience from it. And so I did this growing up. Well, we lived in Dimmitt at the time. We moved around some, and we lived in Dimmitt. Some of you are familiar with that too. But anyway, and we were living in Dimmitt, and we went to church, and Dad got an opportunity to move to a better situation. So we moved from Dimmitt. Well, back in those days, when you left one small town and generally moved to another small town, the church would give you a going away party. And so they gave us a going away party. And as a general rule, you'd get either a gift or a money tree. Well, we didn't get either one. What they had for us and for Mom and Dad, I'm there. I mean, I'm with them. But it was for Mom and Dad, and it was an arrangement of daisies. And I don't have a picture that I wish I did.
Gee whiz, we don't have a picture of the arrangement of daisies.
Well, actually, I do have one, but it doesn't show up because it was filmed in color, and film has a tendency to deteriorate over time, so you can't even tell what it is.
It wasn't exactly digital, is what you're telling me.
Not hardly. Okay, so anyway, these daisies all had leaves, like daisies do, and each leaf was a $1 bill. Okay, so fine. So they bring this out. It had about 15 leaves, or 15 $1 bills. And they told Mom and Dad, said, this is for Roger. I got the gift. They didn't.
Now, wait a minute. Hang on just a second, Roger.
Yes, sir.
This was approximately when?
Well, it was about 1954, which would be, I was about 3 years old at the time.
I was born in 54. So anyway you cut it, this was a while back.
Quite a while back, yes, sir.
And $15, that was a big deal. You could fill up your fuel tank then for $3 or $4.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You could have done a lot of things with it. Yeah. However, the people that we went to church with knew what I enjoyed doing. They knew what I liked, and they had a feeling they knew what I would do with it. And they were right, because we took, sometime after that, we took the $15 and came down to Lubbock, Texas, to UV Blake Record Center, and I bought records with it. Now, back in those days, you bought 78-speed records. Most people don't even know what that is.
Oh, my.
But they were 78-speed records, and they were $1 a piece. So I ended up buying 15 records with that money and took them home, and of course thoroughly enjoyed listening to them, playing with it and so forth. And about 30 years later, in 1984, I went back to UV Blake and bought the whole store. So I went from buying 15 to buying the entire inventory in one fell swoop to keep it going. Mr. Blake, and there is, and I will say this because some people don't know it, there was a UV Blake. That is a man's name, and the man actually ran the store, okay?
Yeah.
So he had put a small sign in the window saying the store was for sale. He didn't advertise it in the paper, just a little sign in the window. I was told about it, went down and checked on it, and ended up buying him out, and I took over in November of 1984.
Did you work there a little bit before 1984? Did you go in and work in the store?
No.
Okay.
I never worked retail before in my life or anything. I sold products, but never worked in any kind of store, primarily because stores were never built where I could work in. And by the way, UV Blake wasn't either. It's just that my dad, the carpenter and fixer-upper that he was, went in and widened the bathroom door out where I could get in it, and took part of the store, the back part of the store, and built an office. He built me an office so I'd have a place to be to run the store.
And it had the big glass windows all around, so you could keep an eye on things.
Well, it had a one-way mirror. I could look out. They couldn't look in.
Oh, my. That was high-tech.
It was well, I live in a high-tech. Well, I'll tell you the high-tech part of UV Blake was when I brought a brand new concept to the business called a computer, because there was no computer down there. And so I bought a computer with money I had earned in the previous job.
Knowing you probably still have it.
No, not hardly. I think I gave it away.
I remember because I also grew up in Lubbock, Texas, and was in the broadcast industry. I started in 1967. But my point is, there was this record store, and every one of us DJs knew about UV Blake. And that is actually before your time, but that's where you went. Other record stores would come and go, but UV Blake was the place that really kind of helped put Lubbock on the map. I mean, people from other towns and other cities all around, they would come to Lubbock to go to UV Blake Records.
Yes.
And you could find anything you were looking for.
Well,
you had to come in and ask for it, but they'd go around and they'd find it for you.
Yeah. If we didn't have it, and I kept the same tradition that Mr. Blake started, or that was what made the store work when I moved into it, was the fact that I could find and get music for people when they needed it. And by this time, there's more record stores. When Mr. Blake left, there was only two. And then all of a sudden, Walmart decided to sell records. The record companies decided to compete against me by letting you have 25 records for a penny on Sunday in the paper. And then someone asked me once, said, well, where is your closest competition? I said, across the street. And they said, Roger, there's nothing over there but 7-Eleven. I said, I know, because 7-Eleven was carrying tapes. They weren't carrying the records, but they were carrying the tapes, and eventually went into CDs. So the record industry opened it up in such a way that everybody was allowed to carry the merchandise, which made it much more difficult to sell and make a profit when you're competing against so many different entities.
Well, and that happened in all kinds of industries and all kinds of everything from the local restaurant and cafe to all of it. But my point is, though, is not so much that as you were so well thought of at that time. Everybody knew Roger Dykes and UV Blake Records, and that's where you went when you were getting birthday presents and Christmas presents, or buying something for your girlfriend or whatever. That's That's where we all went because we knew we'd find what we were looking for or something just as good.
Right. Well, would you like to know who one of my best customers was?
Who?
The funeral homes. Now, the reason they were a good customer is because people would come in for their loved one's funeral, and the night before, they'd be sitting around and they'd remember that he or she liked a particular song.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, they didn't know where it was or how to get it, so they would call.
That was before you could just download from the internet.
Oh, yeah. All this is pre-download stuff.
Yeah.
So, and we fulfilled a lot of people's requests. And I had customers who would actually tear up, literally, because they'd been looking for this record or this song since their loved one passed away or before that, and they couldn't find it, and they could come into the store, name it, and more than likely we could come up with it for them.
Yeah.
And of course, I had one lady that came in, and she said, is Mr. Blake here? Obviously, she wasn't keeping up with the news very well. But anyway, and the clerk said, well, no, I'm sorry. Mr. Blake doesn't own the store anymore, but Roger's here. Well, she looked back at the back and saw me. And I could tell she was totally disappointed because she was looking for an older man who would know what she was talking about. And here's this young 30-year-old person sitting back there. And she kind of apprehensively walked back to the office and said, and I said, can I help you? And she said, I doubt it, but we'll try. And I said, okay, why? She said, I'm looking for a song. And I said, which song you look for? She said, it's called Tatler's Wagon. And I said, yeah, I've got it, or I can get it for you. She said, you're kidding. You even know what it is. I said, oh, yes, ma'am. I know exactly what it is.
I wish we had it. We could play it right now.
No, it's probably still under copyright, but I do have it, by the way. I do have it because the secret to the success in this regard was the fact that when I was the age I was when you saw the pictures earlier and in childhood, I grew up listening to records. But here's the catch. Two things. One was my grandfather loved records. So I listened to his records.
Wow.
And of course, that's where I learned the older stuff. It was odd or unique, I suppose, that my grandfather liked novelty records. And so he had a whole bunch of, what you don't realize is, as you get older and you start trying to remember the songs of your childhood and so forth, it's the novelty ones you remember because they made an impression.
Have you still got those? Did you hold on to any of that stuff?
Of course. I've got all of them.
We've got to figure out a way to get some of that stuff on the show. Now, I know you're thinking about copyrights, but that stuff is pretty far back there.
Well, yeah, I don't know. It's been re-released, though, so I don't know. Not all of it, but most of it is. Anyway,
okay. All right.
But it was that's what. Now, the other thing that made me knowledgeable of older music is because when you're disabled, as I always was, you don't put the records on the record player yourself because you physically couldn't. I couldn't do it. So someone else has to put them on for you, right? Well, okay. My mother and dad didn't like Elvis Presley.
You got censored. Is that what you're telling me?
Sure.
Stuff got censored.
I listened to the music that they were willing to put on the record player. So I grew up listening to music out of the 40s and 50s. And that's what gave me the knowledge base to go into U.B. Blake and be able to name that tune for everybody that walked in.
You're right. Not just anybody could have done that the way you did it.
Right.
Like that.
And so that, and the other thing that we did a lot of course, we fulfilled a lot. I did phone calls and they'd say, I'm looking for a song. I go, okay. And all they knew was a line of it. They didn't know the melody. It was just my parent. We did another thing we did a lot of were 50th wedding anniversaries. Okay. One lady came in and she said, I have a question. I said, okay. She said, do you have anything by Vic Damone? And I said, I think so. Let me look. Well, sure enough, we did have a cassette tape of Vic Damone. And so clerk handed it to her. She said, I am amazed. And I said, okay, thank you. But why are you amazed? She said, because I just left the store and I asked for Vic Damone and they took me to the classical section. And she said, you knew who I was talking about. And I said,
oh, yeah,
yes.
he was a big deal. He was a popular artist for a long time. Yeah.
And of course, I had his stuff. And most of the time I could, if they asked me about it, I could give, information about these artists. We'd visit about them.
Yeah.
Because I knew more about it than just the name. But this is what made them like to come into the store. And that's what kept me in business, was people like that, because they were looking for things they couldn't get anywhere else.
Roger, let me interrupt you just for a moment, because believe it or not, we're about to run out of time. There's a couple of things I would like to mention. And also, it is such an amazing thing when you think about someone who is, and I do this all the time. I forget that you are a quadriplegic. I forget that you are disabled completely and totally, because you and I will get to talk and we'll get to hanging out. The other day, I got over to your house and we visited, and it's always, I forget what you deal with just to go day to day. In that respect, Roger, the original message from this program started out as a podcast and now we're on YouTube. But this program was about the fact that you are dealing with some horrendous situations in your life that have to do with the fact that 30 or 40 years ago, they made decisions about how things should work and how your budget should be handled and all that. When I say they, we're talking about the government and the state of Texas. And when you bring this up, always, you are never remiss at saying, however, though, that you are so thankful that the program, even though it has become deeply flawed, in fact, does exist still.
Yes.
And we never want to lose that spirit of gratitude. I have been asked here at the studio, I've been asked, well, why aren't you guys talking about that as much now? Because there are a lot of people interested in you, Roger, and they want to know how that's going to turn out. And so I just want to mention to folks that it is a time of great silence with the people that are supposed to be administering all this stuff and making decisions. The decisions are few and far between. And Roger, I can say this. I know that you don't want to say this, but I'm going to say it. And that is, you are not listened to, and it's as if nobody cares. And that's not true. It can't be true, but yet that's what it feels like.
Well, it's a matter of priority. And right now in the state of Texas, the priority is the southern border. And that's what everybody in government wants to talk about.
And that's understandable.
And it's worthwhile. Certainly, it's a significant thing to discuss for them as well as us. But point being that because they're busy with something as big as that, and as big a crisis as that is becoming, it has left the rest of the legislation out of touch with what they're working on. But
that's why the original purpose of this program, we are moving slowly now. Now, I just want to go ahead and say, I need to add one more thing to that. We did go behind the scenes with, and this was Roger's idea, and it was a great idea. We offered, since the border is the big deal, and rightly so, we offered to have a mariachi backup band for your show, Roger. They'd be setting up behind you there, and that band we could always break, and they would play some music and that sort of thing. We have not got that figured out yet. But
part of it is cost. Mariachi bands are not cheap. At least a quality mariachi band is not cheap.
They don't work because they could further their career, with an appearance or 2 or 5 or 6 on this program. So,
but right now they're drawing welfare and don't want to. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so. Bless you, brother. I am glad that we had a chance to visit a little while. And Roger Dykes Just Sayin will show up again, folks. And if Roger does, that is. And Roger, man, thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming by, and glad we could get it together.
You've been listening to Roger Dykes Just Sayin. If you'd like to get a message to Roger, his Facebook account is listed as Roger Dykes. Become a friend, or you can send your questions and comments to rogerdykes51@gmail.com. That's ROGERDYKES51@gmail.com. Join us next time for our next episode of Roger Dykes Just Sayin. I'm Michael Shawn. On behalf of Roger Dykes, thanks for listening.